The Marine Canvas Training Institute presents its video classroom series. In this tape, Don Wedge will take you through the design of a convertible top, including measuring in the boat, bending the frame, patterning the top on the boat, and working the pattern in preparation for cutting the fabric. Now here's the Marine Canvas Training Institute's president, Don Wedge.
Our project today is to build a convertible top, side curtain, and drop curtain on this boat. Now this is a boat that's been used, the customer's brought it in, and he wants new on it, including a new frame. So I'm going to go through the sequence of designing a convertible top to some specifications that the customer gave us. Now what you'll notice is that I brought my work order along, and I have a rough sketch of the boat as a side view of it so that I have a place to put information as to what he wants. Now what I did, I sold him on aluminum frames, burgundy umbrella for the material. The specifications that he gave me were that he wanted to be able to stand under this top while he was driving. I checked the height that he wanted, and he said he wanted the top 6'3" high underneath. That solved the height problem. In designing products for boats that require a framework, we have to determine a length, a width, and a height of it in order to design a frame. So when I walk up to this boat, I've already got a visual rectangle built into my head that says how long do I want this product, how high do I want it, and how wide do I want it. With that in mind, and with the fact in mind that I have to design a product that's going to make this boat look better when I'm done than when I started out, I also have an image of all of the lines built into my head as I walked up to the boat. So I want to enhance the lines of the boat. I don't want to build something that's square and ugly. Consequently, in designing the framework for this convertible top, I have a particular tool that I use. And what it is, it started out as a straight tent pole, and then we put a bend in it. The way we got the bend in it is we did it on a bend right bender. Now, a brief explanation of a bend right bender is this. Years ago, when I decided I wanted to bend my own frames, there were no benders on the open market that can be bought readily that anybody knew how to use. Consequently, I designed a bender and a formula to go along with it so that I can bend a frame for any product, for any boat in the world in a flash, and it's not an expensive bender. So we're going to be using the bend right bender, and this tent pole was bent on it because it became a measuring device and a sales tool. The reason I say it that way is this. Many of you are smarter than I am, so you would be inclined to make a scale drawing of this boat, a scale drawing of the product that you want to build. While you're finding your graph paper and figuring out how to make the scale drawing of the boat, I'll have the frame designed and on the boat and ready to pattern before you find your graph paper. And I use this bent tent pole to do it with. The reason I bring that up, we have to have some known facts to work to before we can design anything for a boat. The first known fact is this, that all boats are built crooked. They're not built plumb level and square. The only true thing on a boat is the center line. Consequently, everything that we build will be built to the center line. How do we find the center line of the boat? It's not by measuring across the windshield and taking half, because many times the windshields are put on the boat crooked. So what we do is what we call triangulation by measuring from some fixed point on the back of the boat to a point on the windshield and putting a mark on this side of the center, measuring from a fixed point on the other side and putting the same dimension on the windshield up on the other side of the center, then measuring between the two and putting the true center line on the boat. It's called triangulation. I've already done that. I know exactly where the center line is on this windshield now. And it's not right in the middle of the crack here. It's off by about 1/4 of an inch. Back to where we started. We've got to design a top frame. We know a height because the customer specified it. The length will be determined by the fact that the customer specified that we give him a drop curtain, which is going to hook here, wrap around to the combing on the other side. It's only to close up this cockpit area so that he can get warm when he's out here fishing in the stern. That establishes the length. The width will be established by two things. One, the mounting points and how wide the frame has to be bent. So we have to know four things. We have to know the leg length for the frame. We have to know how wide to lay it out and how wide to flare it out for the mounting point. This tent pole is going to help us do all of that. Normally the way we start is we take the overall length of the boat, or the overall length of the product that we have to build, which in this particular case is 60 inches. We look for the halfway point on that and put a temporary pencil mark over here on the boat, which happens to be right here at about 30 inches. We use a big black hairy lead pencil because it's something that'll wipe off of the boat without a big problem. We don't use a magic marker or something like that. Now we've established a tentative mounting point. Now, the main frame on a convertible top is the one that attaches the framework to the boat. This tent pole represents a framework. This mark on the tent pole is what we call our leg length. It's in relation to the bender. It was put on here before the pole was bent, and it is part of the formula for the bending system that we have, which we'll discuss later when we get into bending the frame. But this mark is the leg length on the bender, so with this mark and this length we'll come up with a leg length. Now the easy and quick way to do it is this. We've established the mounting point. The customer told us that he wanted the top to finish 6'3". So I'm going to set my ruler at 6'3", and I'm going to use it like a plumb bob. And I'm going to set the tent pole on a mounting point. I'm going to see how the plumb bob falls in relation to the combing down here. And while all the time that I've done all of this, here's everything that I've established. I'm at close to a 45-degree angle to the mounting plane, level plane of the boat, which means that when I use the formula for the secondary frame, I'll have another secondary frame swinging off of this one up in here at a right angle. I've established the height. I've checked my angles. So all of a sudden, I've got my leg length. So while I've got it right in my hand, just take and run my ruler right down around this tent pole to the bottom and take a reading, and it says 48 inches. So I come over here to my drawing, which looks like this at the moment. I'm going to draw a side view of a convertible top, and I'm going to write 49 inches at the top of the main leg. Now, if you remember when we got into the bending system, I gave you some formulas on framework. So automatically the secondary frame will be 50% of the main frame plus 2 inches. So half of 49 is 24 plus 2 is 26 inches. You notice I didn't fool around with the half inches. We don't fool with that. The other thing that I'll make very clear to you right now is, again, while you're finding your graph paper to make a scale drawing, I'll have this frame bent and cut off twice to fit the boat. I do not make deductions for fittings because I can cut the frame off, but I sure can't add to it. Already, I've got my 2 leg lengths for the framework. Next project is how wide. We already established that by mounting it here, we're close to a 45-degree angle. We're going to get a 90 between it and the secondary frame. We already have established one other fact, which you didn't even realize, that when you build tops, you never go over 36 inches from frame to windshield, in the case of a convertible top. This top is going to be 60 inches straight line length, so it's probably going to be right around 36 inches from the windshield to the frame to the frame. But we're within the parameters that are acceptable. So while we're right here, we might just as well measure across here and find out that the mounting width is going to be 51 inches. So over here on the work order, I'm going to put 51 inches mount width. Which looks like that. The next project is how wide do I need this frame so that it will have a width layout to go with the bender. Also, how wide do I need this frame so that I will enhance the lines of the boat as opposed to building a square and ugly. If I were to take this framework, set it up square on the boat like this, it would look pretty bad. What I'm looking at here is the lines of this boat taper in a little bit. So the guy that's following me down the waterway or the guy that's meeting me up front, I want the lines of this boat to continue right on up to the top, over the top, and back down the other side. I don't want it coming up, out, and over, square and ugly. How do I get a top that's narrower, and how do I know how much it should be? Take this stupid bent tent pole and hold it up here like this is one way. You can sight it this way, or what I do is I lay it right down on the windshield. Because the facts of life are that if you measure from the mounting point across and measure this dimension up here, it's much narrower at the top. How much narrower? We don't really care about because we're going to do it by our framework, and we're going to use known facts to do it. We're going to lay the framework up here on the windshield, and we've got two known facts to come up with the layout width of this frame. We have a center line and a leg length. So what we're going to do is use the formula that goes with the bender, and the formula is this. We have to know leg length, width minus 20 inches, and another leg length to take any straight piece of tubing, lay it out, bend it, and have it come out the width we want. So what we're going to do here is take the formula and work it backwards. We're going to measure from the center line to the leg length and find out that it's 14 inches. We're going to double that to get to the leg length over on this side of the boat. Makes it 28, and we're going to add 20 to it to get it to this point right here. So we're going to take our work order and write down here that we want a 48-inch layout. And there's what our work order looks like, and we have all the necessary information now to go and bend a set of frames for this convertible top. We also have all the necessary information that if we hadn't already given a price to the customer, we would know exactly how much tubing it was going to take, how many fittings it was going to take, how much material it's going to take to build this top. So that when we give him a price, and it's an intelligent price, and we know that it's going to make this boat look better than when we started out. So now I'm going to show you how we go about laying out the tubing, marking it, cutting it, and bending it. So here's what we do. The first leg is going to be 54 inches. I'm going to measure from the end of the tubing up 54 inches. And I'm going to put an arrow on the tubing, and I'm going to put it roughly halfway around the tubing. And that's what it looks like. Now, to continue using the table to my advantage, because I don't have a helper here, I slide the arrow up to this 2x4, which is our backup board. And the formula for this bender says to do this. Mark the leg length, take the layout width minus 20 inches to get to the start of the second leg length. So I'm going to take the 45-inch layout width, which is what I want, deduct 20 from it. I'm going to measure over here 25 inches. I need to stop there just a minute and tell you this. That formula is cast in concrete. It's on every frame that we ever use. So I'm going to take 45-inch layout, deduct 20, come down here to 25, and I'm going to put another arrow that matches that one. And there's what it looks like. Now, what I would not be picking it up, I'd be leaving it lay right there. And while I've got my ruler strung out here at the 25 inches, I come down here and put the center line of the frame, which is at 12.5 inches. And that mark is a slash with a C through it. Then to crown the frames, we put as many 8-inch marks as we can get on each side of center, and it's in the form of a slash across the frame. To get the next leg length, we come down here another 54 inches from the start of this leg, and this is how we spell cut in Florida. We put a K here, and that's where we're going to cut it. I've now got the main frame all laid out, ready to cut and bend. To use the bender as a vise, what I'm going to do is put the tube into the bender, put the leg length on the leg length mark on the bender, and it's built right into the bender here. Turn the marks till they face my body, get out here at the end of the tubing and bring it around to about a right angle and let it spring back, keeping it level in that groove. Let it spring back, force it into the bender. If you put it into this groove, and this backup, it'll hang there. And it won't turn. So now it's a vise that won't goof up your tubing. Come down here to where it says K for cut. Put a little bit of pressure on it. Put your tubing cutter on here and cut it off. All right, the next step that we do is this, and this is where common sense will help you. Our secondary frame, see if I can get that to fall. Our secondary frame is calling for a 29-inch leg and 45 inches minus 20, which is the same as the other frame, right? But the reason we do it in this sequence is this. It catches you making a mistake so that you don't waste a lot of tubing. So I'm going to measure down here 29 inches, put another leg length on, put my ruler away, bring it over here and lay it up to the main frame and match up the leg lengths. And if you match up the leg lengths like this and copy all of these marks, and with it laying there, measure down another 29 inches and put another leg length and put K for cut. Okay, I got my secondary frame laid out and double checked. I'm just going to lay it aside. Now I'm going to finish bending the main frame. Put it back in the bender, put the leg length mark on the leg length mark on the bender. Get it level out here. If it's laying on a table like this, it is level. Keep it in the groove. Use all the leverage you got. Bring it around to about a right angle. Let it spring back. Let the bender hold it so that you don't have to bend over and pick it up, because I'm too old and lazy to do that anymore. So I let the bender hold it while I walk around here. Pick the frame up, put the center mark on the crown mark, and that's this mark on the bender. It's marked CR for crown. Put the center mark on the crown mark and bring it around until it kisses the bender and quit. When it kisses the bender, quit. Don't try to second guess it, because it will not do anything except put a kink in it. Try to go to the next mark. If you can't get to the next mark, you don't need that mark. Flip the frame over. Put the center mark back on the crown mark. Put your hand up against your hip. Use your whole body. Don't try to be a bull. Do it the hard way. Walk into it, bring it around until it kisses the bender and quit. Pull it into the bender, let the bender be a vise. Now is when you start measuring to check out your frame. And to make a symmetrical frame, what we have to have is a frame that's 52 inches wide down here at the mount with 2 equilateral triangles measuring from the end of the leg to the center mark on the frame. I've got 55 inches there. I've got 56 inches to the center. This one I got 56.5 inches to the center. So what that's telling me is this. My frame is a little bit too wide yet. This triangle is larger than that triangle, right? So all I have to do is flip it back over in the bender. Put the leg length mark on the leg length mark on the bender. Get out here, get your arms out straight. Take all the spring out of it. After the spring is out, then watch it bend. It only takes a little bit. And when you're this far out, it only takes a little bit of pull here to create a lot out the bottom. Now I'm at 52. Which is what I'm calling for up there. 54.5 on that triangle. 54.5 on that triangle. So now I've got a symmetrical frame with a crown in it. Here's your secondary piece of pipe. And again, you guys are all stronger than I am. It can be a big bull and pull that around, but the problem is you have no control over it and you could kink it. So we have a helper here. His name is Bill. It's a 3-foot piece of 1-inch water pipe with the burr taken out on the inside. Put the leg length mark on the leg length mark on the bender. Get out here on Bill and use all the leverage you got, because when it comes to stainless steel, you're going to need it. You thought I'd forgot how to use that for a vise, didn't you? Scared me for a minute, too. Now we're going to bend the other leg on the secondary frame. Leg length mark on the leg length mark on the bender. Level on the table. Take Bill, pull it around to a right angle, and let it spring back. Walk over here, put the center mark on the crown mark. Bring it in until it kisses the bender. Flip it over and do the other side. Always do both sides of center. Lay these two frames up there and see what you got to do to correct it, okay? These two frames, I got a little carried away and brought them in. The nice part about this bender, as opposed to some of the other ones that are on the market, you can't fix a problem. This one you can fix a problem. This leg has got to come out a little bit. Put it in the bender. Let the bender support the crown. Come over here and push on it with your leg and move it out a little. That leg had to go out more than this one. Let the bender support it. Now I've got the legs pretty close, but I've got some twist in the frames, okay? I take a look and see which frame has got the twist in it. And it's that one right there. If you all look at it, you can see all the twist in it. But normally we'll put this under something that's real heavy so we can pull it back into shape. Now you got a set of frames that match. If you line your center lines up and your leg lengths, you got the same amount of crown in them, and you got two frames that match. So the next thing I'm going to do is get busy and get the eye ends and the jaw slides and assemble these frames. When it comes to assembling fittings on the boat, we go to the bins, we pull out the number of fittings that it's going to take to put this top on the boat, which is 4 eye ends, 2 jaw slides, and 2 mounting brackets. And I've found that it's a lot easier to assemble them right here on the bench than it is down on the floor. And the reason we assemble them on the bench is this. By putting the eye end and the jaw slide together here on the bench, we can line all the screw heads up the same direction. Why do we line them all up the same direction? So that when we put them on the frame, the screw heads will be facing in towards the center of the boat instead of out. Why will they be that way? So that if you get clumsy and you drop one, you drop it in the boat instead of in the water. The better reason for it is that when you put it on the frames with the screw heads facing in and you're hanging curtains on the side, it doesn't scratch the curtains, which gives you a better quality job. Again, if these frames were wide enough to hang up on those pegs on the wall, I'd be doing it up there. They're not, so I'm going to do it the hard way down here on the bender. Slide them on so that the screw heads are facing in. Bring them up here until the leg lengths on the frames match. Tighten up the set screw on the eye end. Come over on this side. Leg lengths match on the frames up there. Twist them up into shape so that they're perpendicular to the frame. Tip it up and tighten up your jaw slides. Now your frames are assembled, ready to go onto the boat. The only other thing you have to have is your mounting brackets and your eye ends for the bottom. And we usually put them on the boat. We can put the eye ends on here, and then we would go out to the boat and put the jaw slides on or the mounting brackets on the boat. Okay, we've returned from the bending station. We've attached the frames to the windshield the way that we discussed when we were designing the frames. And because I've gotten a little older since I was here the last time, I brought my helpers along. I've got Sally Nichols and Becky Abruzzino to help me show you how we're going to pattern this top. Because what we're going to do is pattern a convertible top, side curtains, aft or drop curtain, all one trip. And we're going to use the dot system of patterning. So we have the frames attached to the boat, so now the girls are going to show you the process of taping them up to get them ready to pattern. Now we have some go ahead girls. We have some specific sizes that we discussed with the customer, and he requested that we have 6 foot 3 inches of clearance underneath the top when it was done. So what we do is put this first tape on the main frame, set it where we think 6 foot 3 is, and measure from the deck up and find out what it really is. Again, we're using our fiberglass reinforced strapping tape because it's the only tape we found that'll hold the frames up in such a way that you can get a good pattern. Now she has the main frame taped into place. Now she's going to put tape from the main frame to the secondary frame and get it set at the same height so that we have a top that's level, that's going to come from the windshield up to the frame, level out, and then fall off with a drop curtain. You'll notice that most of the time she hits these heights right on the money. After you've been doing it for a while, you'll know where 6 foot 3, 6 foot 4 is. You'll also go by the length of your body and so on. Now she's going to put 2 tapes on that are going to hold this down tight, and she's going from the fixed object on the boat to the movable object on the frame, and she's not pulling hard, she's just pulling it back tight, dropping the tape on, not wrapping it around the frame because it may have to be adjusted later. Now she's going to run tapes from the front of the windshield, and what we found is over the years that it works better to stick the tape to the windshield frame as opposed to the glass, because some of the new glass and the new windshields has a coating and the tape won't stick. So we run the tape up the windshield frame to this frame here, round it, and back to the main frame. As in all patterning, when you're taping up frames on boats, make sure that they're good and solid. Because if they move at any point in the patterning sequence, anything that you've done before that becomes garbage. I tell everybody, tape does not cost that much. If you feel you need 2 or 3 more tapes on it to make it good and solid, make sure you do it. Because most of the time when we pattern tops and so on, we don't have the availability of a shop with a boat on a trailer. This happens to be an exception. Most of our work we have to do out in the water on the boat when it's sitting in the water at a dock. So we got to contend with the wind and rocking of the boat and the whole works. What they're doing here is just taking a quick visual check to see if they're relatively parallel with the windshield. Don't get to fighting with this problem, okay? Here's why. We work from the center line of the boat again. Always from the center line. We have the center line on the frames, center line on the windshield. To try to force this into submission, because it will not work, because many of your windshields are on the boat not square with the center line. So bring it up until it looks good, quit fiddling with it, and tape it up. Now once it's taped up like this, if you're satisfied that that's enough tape to pattern with, then tighten your back 2 strap tapes one more time just to make sure and lock them down. Because at this point we're going to start patterning and we don't want anything to move. Okay, here's what first what we have to do is this. We have to determine the shape of the convertible top, the side curtains, and the drop curtain. And here's a quick and easy way of determining the shape of that before you've pulled the first pattern. So Becky's going to come over here and run a tape from this point on the windshield, which represents the edge of the top, up to what would look good on this frame, back to this frame. And this is the arbitrary call that you have to make. You are the designer. There's no place written in a book where it says this is right or wrong. You were hired to do the job, so you're the fabricator. You make sure it looks good. Now, the reason we do it this way is if we don't feel good about it, we can get off the boat, walk down the boat 3 or 4, or down the dock 3 or 4 docks, and take a look at it and see if this line blends in with the lines of the boat. That's what we're trying to accomplish. You are the designer and the fabricator. Nobody can tell you how to do this. You got a fussy customer, let him come out and take a look at it. But in the meantime, make sure that you know what you're doing. Now we do it most of the time by feel, because we've been doing it so many years now that we can feel when it's wrong. But if you don't feel good about it, get off, go look at the boat. This line represents the configuration of the top and the side curtains. If you're happy with it, which at this point they apparently are, they're not moving around. So here's what they're going to do, and this is where we get into the dot system of patterning. We're going to put a dot below the tape and a dot above the tape, and we're going to use a center punch. Now why do we use a center punch? Because it's kind of our way of doing things so that everybody knows that we did the job. But what it really is this: a dot on the frame in line with the seam here, a dot in line with the seam above the tape, here, there, and down on the windshield. And what these dots are 1/2 inch apart vertically. That is not up the frame like this. That's vertical, straight up and down. So we use the tape as a measuring device again. So she's going to come up here, and where she visualizes the seam coming down the frame, she's going to put a center punch mark there, and one there, one over there, one there, and down there. Go ahead, Beck. Now we use a spring-loaded center punch. I guess I never told you people before, but I get a big kick out of selling tools, so we happen to have these for sale too. But they're a tool that works very well on boats, because when you have to drill a hole in tubing, You have to have a center punch mark so that your drill doesn't slip. This doesn't require a hammer. You just carry the center punch with you. It's spring loaded. All right, the next step is to get these to the other side of the boat. And you don't do it by running a tape, because you're not that good, I'm not that good, nobody's that good. You can't measure from the gunnel because the boat might be sitting cockeyed in the water. The only place you can measure from that is consistent is measure from the last eye end on the frame that you're looking at up to the lower dot and go make it happen over there. Measure from the last eye end on this frame up to the lower dot and go make it happen there. Now if you're lucky enough to have two people, she can read it and she can do it. So now they're going to get the lower dots over on that side.
12 and 12 and a half.
She gave her the dimension for the lower dot and the upper dot.
32 and 5/8. 33 and 3/8.
Now you'll notice that it was more than a ½ inch between the dots back here. Why? Because the frame is on an angle. But in a vertical measurement, they're 1/2 inch apart. Now she's going to get the ones on the front corner.
2 inches. 2 and 5/8.
All right, now they've established all of the upper dots, and what these dots are representing is this. The lower dots represent the finish edge of the top. The upper dots represent the finish edge of the side curtain. The reason we do it this way, all of the complaints that I've had for the last 40 years is about water leaking in a boat right at this point. So we always make sure that our top overlaps our side curtains by 1/2 inch. Now the next thing is we have to establish the shape of the side curtain. Now you'll notice that this boat has already got the snaps in it. We did not put them in. This is a recover job with a new frame. So we are going to build top, side curtains, and a drop curtain. And we have not established the snap line down here yet, but we are going to do it with pencil for now. So now we have to decide where this side curtain is going to come down. And again, you've got to remember the customer wants to be able to use this boat, and you don't want him kicking the side curtain all day long. So we would have a finish edge coming down this edge here. We would need one snap here for the drop curtain to come around the corner and hook. So we would add another snap up here 2 inches away from this one, which Becky, if you'll come up 2 inches and draw a dot with a circle around it. And that's just representing a snap for the moment. The next thing is we normally finish our product 3/4 of an inch outside of the center line of the snaps. So if you were to run this center line of snaps here, that would mean that we would need to put a dot down here 3/4 of an inch down below this line that would connect to a dot up here for the finish edge of the side curtain. So Becky, if you'll put a dot there. Then what she's going to do is take the dimensions of this dot from given points on this fiberglass and give it to Sally over here so that Sally can recreate it over there so that they're symmetrical. Try to go from some place on the glass that's built into the mold. So we'll go from this curve right here, and we'll go back, we'll go forward X amount of inches and then down X amount of inches from that curve. Okay, now what you probably don't realize here is that all of a sudden we have established a complete outline of every product on this boat. This is the top, side curtains on both sides, and a drop curtain that's going to come from these dots to this dot, around over to the dots over there. Let me explain this dot system and where it came from. Years ago when I started teaching this course, when I would tell people to have the top finish here, I would have them draw a slash. And when I say make it finish there, I'd say draw a slash. Now the interpretation of a slash is anywhere on the length of it, right? And I created more garbage with classes than you can imagine. They didn't know and they didn't care because they didn't know any better, but I knew better and I couldn't figure out what the heck to do about it. So one Sunday night, my oldest daughter came out to my house for dinner and she had my grandsons with her, and they had a new book where you connect the dots and make a picture. And I sat there watching them do this all evening long, and I said, what the hell? And I came back into the shop the next morning, and we started in, and I put the dot system to work here, and every class since then, when I say make it come to the dot, it comes there. It's not any interpretation different. A dot is a dot is a dot. So that's why we call this the dot system of patterning. And it will work on every product that you ever have to build on a boat. And let me go one step further on that. When you have to pattern a particular item on a boat, we use the shrink wrap, and we put the shrink wrap up there and we pattern the largest area that we can pattern without putting a dart in it, because I hate darts. So where the dart would be required is where we put a dot. Now we'll get into that a little later, but this is the system that we use so that we don't have to put darts in products. Now we've established all of the dots on the products that we have to pattern. So I'm going to review one more time what we have to pattern. We have to pattern the opening created by this frame, this windshield, dots, and dots. This frame, dots, and dots. Side curtain will be dots, dots, dots. Side of the windshield, down the combing to the dot. Drop curtain will be from dot to dot, around to the dots on the other side. That's all you have to worry about. So what we have to do now is measure the openings that have to be patterned and go and cut some shrink wrap that's a little bit larger than the opening that we're going to pattern. And it's not that expensive, so make sure that you make it a little bit larger. Now here's what we do on our work order. We draw an exploded view of the project and we put numbers on it so that we have a place to put sizes of shrink wrap that we're going to cut. That way when we come back to the boat, we've got a pile of shrink wrap with numbers on it. We pick up the top piece on the pile, whatever number it represents, we pattern that opening. So go ahead and measure it out. Always be aware when you're measuring these openings, cut the shrink wrap a little bit big.
3'6". By 6 foot. Side curtain. 5 foot. By 4 foot. Center. 6 foot.
Now the
3'6".
patterning medium that we're using is an opaque shrink wrap. We buy it in rolls that are 12 feet wide and 175 feet long. And the reason we use the shrink wrap for patterning is this. If we make a mistake in our patterning, we haven't hurt anything. The way I used to teach this, which was pattern with the material, we would come out here with a blank of material, put it on there, mark it up,
7 foot.
mark darts in it, which always looked ugly, and if we made one miscut while we were doing it, then we goofed up several yards of fabric. With the shrink wrap, we bring it out here. If we make a mistake, the worst we have to do is tape it back together. The other thing that you're going to find in using the shrink wrap as opposed to the finished material is this. When you bid the job, you're bidding it based on using an amount of material, as I did in the estimating part of this project. But when you pattern with shrink wrap, I will almost guarantee you 100% that most of the time you will get the whole project out of 2/3 to 3/4 as much material. So now we're going to stop and go and cut the pieces of shrink wrap that we need to pattern this project. We're about to pattern this. Now we've got our dots, we've got our tape on here. We've taken strapping tape and put it on the frame and then overlap that with seam tape because it's a double face tape and it's something that we use to stick the shrink wrap to the framework. So the girls are going to pick up number 1 here and they're going to pattern the front panel. They're going to pull the protective coating off of the seam tape. And all of this can be done by one person. The reason we're doing this with two people is to get the job done quicker so that you don't get bored watching this tape. One of the big secrets to working with a shrink wrap is don't be fighting with it and pulling it real tight when you shouldn't. Just pull it up till it looks good. They're making a relief cut around the light up there. We have a bunch of snaps put into some scrap tape that we had so that we don't have to pick up individual snaps. And you'll find that you can snap the shrink wrap to the snaps on the boat using a female snap. And it gives you another set of hands to help you. Now, if you had to do this out in the wind, you'd have some clamps here and maybe put an occasional clamp up on this frame. We're in a nice, calm building today, so we're just going to stick it on with the... And don't cut the tape. I warn everybody when you're doing this, trimming this extra out, don't bump the frame and don't cut the tape. The wind blew and the snaps came off. They're putting the female snaps on up there, then they're going to come up here and take it loose from the seam tape. Pull it up till it looks nice up front, and don't be pulling and tugging real hard. Just make it look good. Form it down just the way it's going to be when it's all sewed up. Because these tops, especially right up in this area here in the curved area, you can pull so hard you can pull a belly into them right in front of that frame. And there's no point in it. Just form it in and let it lay around there. Okay, now that they got the shrink wrap on, the next thing they have to do is mark it. And what they're going to do is mark on this frame where the seam would be. And your question should be, where should the seam be? The seam will be the intersection between this piece of material that's going to be back here and the piece of material that's up there. If you can't visualize it with material, visualize it this way. If you were doing this with boards instead of material, where would the intersection between two stiff boards be? And that's where you mark. You're drawing a fine line and you're putting fine dots. And those two dots I can see just as well as a great big dot that's the size of my little fingernail. And I cannot interpret that wrong. But if it's a 1/4 inch dot, I can interpret it wrong. I'm a fanatic about these dots being small, the lines being small, because we don't want to interpret them wrong. If you have big dots, you'll find that by the time you get to the back of the boat, you've got up to 1 inch of too much material. They're marking the snaps up forward on the windshield. They're marking where the finish edge is going to be, which is outside of the snap line. She just put a little arrow up here. And what that represents is this. We're going to be putting a zipper up here for a walkthrough. And in this case, there's not a walkthrough. That's not that kind of a windshield. But the guy can roll it up and have ventilation in the boat when he's got everything else closed up. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to identify this pattern a couple of ways. And there's 2 new words in your vocabulary as of today. And they are pout and sout. And the reason we put them on is this. When you have these patterns on the table, if you put them on the table upside down, then the whole project would be upside down. So anytime you lay a pattern down, if you can't read pout or sout, it's upside down. And here's what it stands for. Pout stands for port, outside. Sout stands for starboard, outside. Every pattern on every boat, on every project, will have those 2 words on it, or you're wrong. You shouldn't be coming back to the shop with it. The other thing, it's a total necessity, is the center line on any edge of the pattern where it hits the center line of the boat. As in, it's hitting it up here on the frame, it's hitting it down there in the windshield. The reason they're so important is we bend our own frames. Let's say that we forget some part of this as we're marking it. When we get back to the shop, we can recreate certain parts of it and solve problems that we caused out on the patterning job. The other thing that we always put on, she's got pout over here, she's going to put sout over here, and we put the customer's name on the pattern. Why? Because we might pattern 6 jobs in a day. And if we get a pattern mixed up, we want to be able to put it back with the right person. That's all there is to patterning the forward edge of this curtain. But we do have 2 dots here. We got 2 dots up here. The reason that they're doing what they're doing right now, they're pulling the tape off with the snaps on it, and they're putting a little dot with a circle around it, which stands for a snap. And the reason that they're doing it as they take it off is this. Sometimes when you're patterning, you get the pattern pulled a little bit cockeyed, and you have to move it. So it's conceivable that you could have 2 little holes right here, side by side. So as they take them off, they mark them. That way there's no question when you get back on the pattern table which hole represented the snap. We do not put the snaps in until we get back to the boat to install it, but they're reference points. She just wrote forward up there. She could write aft up here. This piece here is so symmetrical that sometimes you need it. But on the other hand, if you think about pout and sout, you don't have to have it. You notice that when they lay this down on there, they're not pulling and tugging. They're just laying it down until it looks good. Part of the reason that we use this 6 mil opaque shrink wrap is this. It works a lot better than Visqueen. Visqueen is 6 mil also, but Visqueen, which is what you know of a clear plastic like this that you can buy in a lumber yard, has a tendency to contract in the cold weather and a tendency to sag in the hot weather. I don't know why this doesn't do that, but I know it works. So if it works, I don't question it. And the cost is a little bit, quite a lot more in fact. But it works and I get good patterns. So if it works, I don't mess with it. So it is a 6 mil opaque shrink wrap. What they're going to do next is they're going to draw the lines on the frames that represent the seam. And they're going to put the 2 dots here, 2 dots on this side, and the 2 dots on each frame on the other side. You notice that they're using the Sharpie, using their fingers as a guide, and always stop your line short of the 2 dots because we got to maintain the integrity of those 2 dots on every pattern wherever they apply. And the reason that I say that is this whole project, when we get it on the cutting table, will go together like a big puzzle. And we'll be able to tell up front whether we made a horrible mistake or not. We'll also be able to establish the zipper lengths and the zipper starts and the zipper stops for the whole project. We're putting sout and pout on it and the customer's name. I don't know if you've been paying attention or not, but even though we've been trying to teach while we're doing this, this whole project of patterning this system, you can go ahead and take it off, girls. The whole project of patterning this top with this system with one person that knows exactly what they're doing or two people that know exactly what they're doing will not take you over 15 or 20 minutes. And you can make that up on the cutting table if you make a good pattern. So again, I tell everybody, if you're going to be a pattern maker, be a good one, because all of the time that you take to do this correctly will be made up on the cutting table, and you'll make money doing it. Side curtains especially. Hold them up here, stick them down, snap them down. Don't be pulling and tugging. It's not required. You're each going to put the pair of dots on that are on the frames. The pair of dots that are up on the windshield. Draw the finish line down the windshield and put this dot on that we established as being the corner of the side curtain at the aft curtain, or the drop curtain in this case. And she's going to put this dot on, and if you're worried about losing that dot, put a little arrow up above it pointing up. Why? Because that dot's going to be connected to a dot up here. Now, I'm going to say it now because I got to get your brains engaged, but the only dot that's not here in this whole system is the mystery dot. And I'm not even trying to be funny, but this was named by one of my classes about 5 years ago when I started this whole project of patterning with the dot system. We have a mystery dot, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's going to end up right up here 1.5 inches after these dots. And what it represents is the junction between the side curtains and the aft curtain. And this right here is where all the complaints about all the canvas work in the world is with all of the boaters. Why? Because most people, when they make their tops, they have their pocket come clear to the edge of the top. Then as they come back through here with the side curtain, they have to scoop it down around and back up under the flap. And there's always a little hole right there. And that's where all the water runs in the boat. And that's where I've been chewed out over the years. So I've eliminated that because our side curtains will come straight back to the mystery dot. And there's no way for water to run uphill and into that hole. This is the Pout S/C for D wedge. It stands for the side curtain for this particular boat. She's going down and marking all these snaps, just in the case that they made 2 holes instead of 1. At least they know which one it is. Okay, while they're doing that, I would like to explain why we use the shrink wrap for the patterning. It's a lot less expensive than using the finished material, and it's something that can save us material and make us a lot of money. So we use that, and it helps us to find the dots. It cleans the whole system up. So if you use the system, use the shrink wrap, you're going to save yourself time and money. Now this is going to be a straight down drop curtain. They're going to stick it up here on the frame. They're going to pull it down back here on the 2 combings, and it may be a little bit hard to see, but they've got their hands down here where they got to make a cut in it to get it to break down over the edge. And they're making a relief cut to get it to fall down to the floor. Then they have to make a cut across the back edge of the combing so they can get it to wrap around the combing and come up to this snap and this dot up here. You notice how they put it up there temporarily, came down and got it looking real good across the boat and made their relief cuts to get it down into the floor. Now they're going to come back up here and tighten it up a little bit so it looks right. Now this is going to be a drop curtain, and there's some decisions you have to make, and I'm talking about these things while they're getting this patterning done, but you put a drop curtain on here. The customer has got this. This is a fishing boat, okay? He's got a cabin up forward. He's got a cockpit here, You put a drop curtain on it, then he can go out when it's foul weather, stay relatively comfortable, come back here, do his fishing, go back in where it's warm. Consequently, we have to make some sort of access in and out of the cockpit area for him. In this case, the boat is so small that rather than make a door to walk through, which would require 2 zippers, we're probably going to put 1 zipper right down the center. So another reason why the center mark is so important. We've got the center mark on the frame up here, and we will find the center mark on the bottom by measuring across the boat. We'll connect those 2 lines, and that is where our zipper will be. In the event that he wants a window in this, and this is something you need to check with your local authorities on because some states have different rules regarding this. Aft curtains and drop curtains, they close the cockpit area up. Many states require that you put a window up here. Some states don't require a window. A lot of customers would prefer not to have a window because they don't want to pay for having the glass replaced when it burns out or it just wears out. But you have to know what the state requires, and I prefer to go ahead and put a window in every drop curtain and every aft curtain for this reason. If I'm going to get hit from behind, I want to see who's going to do it so I can blame them later. Or if I'm going to be out in foul weather and I have to back up to the dock, I want to be able to see to get there. So what I would do on this particular drop curtain is I would decide by standing right here, because this guy is going to drive this boat standing up, how high I want my window. So I'd put a mark up here for the top edge of it, and I'd put another one down here at the height that I wanted it to finish at the bottom. Then I might say, well, I wonder how wide I want it. So I would look at it and say, by taking my ruler and holding it up there, well, maybe 3 feet wide would look good. So I'd write 3 feet by whatever this dimension is up and down. Then all of that can be done on the cutting table. And here's why you do it on the cutting table. And it's why the center line is so important again, okay? Center line, center line. When we put this window in, it's going to be put in square with the center line. We're not going to try to measure up from the deck or down from the frame, because if they're not level, we're going to have a window in this curtain that's a little bit cocked like this, out of level. So everybody in the boat's going to stand there out of level, and we don't want that. So we will put the window in square with the center line. How are we doing, ladies? One more thing, we don't put it on too much anymore because we remember, but when you're brand new at this line represents the seam for the top. There'll be a 2-inch finished flap hanging down below that frame. So what you do is up here put a -1 inch, and that reminds you when you get on the cutting table to cut this 1 inch short of the line. Why? Because there's a 2-inch flap here with a zipper 1 inch down from that line. And the zipper that is on this curtain that attaches the 2 together is 1 inch from there also. So until you get used to it, just put a -1 inch up here. That'll remind you to cut it 1 inch short when you get on the cutting table. Back to the same old rules. This stuff here is shrink wrap. It's easy to write yourself instructions, and don't be ashamed to do it, because I guarantee you that if you go out and pull patterns all day long on 6 different boats, you have no idea in the afternoon what you did in the morning. So what you do is write yourself notes, because you can't hurt anything. We got pout, sout, DC for drop curtain, D-wedge for the customer's name. We got a dot, a little line pointing up that's going up to the mystery dot. We got the finish line here, finish line across the bottom, same on the other side. And that, folks, is all there is to patterning a convertible top, side curtains, and a drop curtain. Okay, we're back at the cutting table. We've pulled the patterns on the boat for a convertible top, side, and aft curtain. And here's what we call working the patterns. We have the aft half of the convertible top pattern laying here. The reason we know it's correct is that we can read pout, we can read sout, We have a pair of dots here, a pair of dots here, and the same on the other side. So what we're going to do is connect the outer dots on the pattern. And the girls are going to do that with a straight edge, and they're going to leave the dots intact because we always want to be able to find them. So draw your line within about an inch of the dots and quit. Now for those of you that are starting out, this is ready to cut out, but you have to know where you're at and what you're going to do. We're going to sew this edge to another panel, so it requires a 1/2 inch seam allowance over here. This edge will be the same way. It'll be sewed to another panel. This is the finished cut. This is a finished cut. So if you're not sure, you can write FIN for finish and a little arrow plus a 1/2 inch over here. We don't do it much anymore, but we'll put it on just for your benefit. That tells you when you cut it out, make sure you cut out 1/2 inch seam allowance on each edge, finish on each side. And you can go ahead and cut it out, girls. Now, if you can't cut a 1/2 inch seam allowance, mark it. We've been doing it long enough, we know what a 1/2 inch is, and we cut it. As you cut through the dots, try to leave them intact so that we can see them. The 1/2 inch seam allowance is very important because if you cut a 1/2 inch and sew a 1/2 inch, the product comes out right. If you cut a 1/2 inch and sew 3/4 or 3/8, you got garbage again. That's all there is to cutting out the aft half. Now we're going to pull up the forward half of the curtain, or the top, I mean. We're going to look at it, identify what it is we're looking at. Here's the leading edge because here's the windshield with the snaps on it. There's the edge that's going to be sewed to another half of the top, so we're going to require a 1/2 inch over there, finish cut over here, and we have a pair of dots here and a pair of dots down here and the same on the other end. So again, we're going to connect the outer dots on the pattern, leaving the dots intact. Always stop about an inch short. The reason I gave her the new marker, it's cheaper to throw this marker away and use a new one than it is to make a wide mark and have a sloppy looking mark. Again, we're going to cut a 1/2 inch seam allowance on this edge. We're going to cut a finish down each side and cut the finish across the front. And we have some cutouts up here for a windshield wiper and a light. What it says, do. Now while she's finishing cutting across here, we have an arrow here and we have one on the other side, and what this represents is this zipper that's going to be put into this top to create an opening to provide ventilation or a walk-through to get up forward on the boat. The only two marks that we can work to, 3 marks, are the center lines and these 2 arrows. So the way we're going to accomplish it, and you want to make sure that you do this the correct way, by measuring from the center line to the arrow up on the leading edge, and whatever that dimension is, measure from the center line on the aft edge out and put a mark same place. What this does is create 2 parallel lines running up the leading side of the top. If you do it any other way, they could be leaning one way or the other. They look terrible and you got a bad job. So she's going to measure from the center line to the arrow over on this edge and tell her, and she's going to put the same mark up on that side.
16.
All right, now this was 16 on one side and 16.5 on the other. Don't second guess it. Go with it. Why? Because if the windshield is a little bit cockeyed on the boat, we're interested in having 2 parallel lines for the zippers. We're not interested in having these exact. A 1/2 inch plus or minus either way, the customer will never see. But if you get them cockeyed from each other, you will see it. These lines are connected, and what we're going to do, because we're going to cut this pattern apart, and then we're going to lay it on the material and cut it out. And we're going to create a flap here to cover the zipper. And this is a takeoff on production work. So we put an arrow pointing to this line and put plus 1 inch. And over here we put an arrow pointing to this line, plus 1 inch. Now, because we might want to put it back together someday, we're going to draw 2 little marks across there and 3 little marks over there, so that if we ever have to put it back together, we can get it in the right sequence, because we can match it up just like a puzzle. Pout, sout, out, pout, all the time, so that we don't get the pattern upside down. This piece is ready to be cut apart. Okay, we're going to lay that aside. The next panel we're going to bring up is the side curtain, so that we can get involved in this mystery dot. I think I talked about the mystery dot on the boat, and now is where you find the mystery dot. Suddenly it's going to appear right here on this table. Again, to get you reoriented with where we're at. We're on the pout side curtain. And hopefully you can see all of these dots, but this is the snap line coming down the windshield to the last snap, and we have a dot down here that we have to finish to. If we look up in here somewhere, there's going to be a pair of dots right here, which are the pair of dots that were on the secondary frame on the convertible top. And back here we have another pair of dots that were on the main frame on the aft end. Here's where the mystery dot appears. We're going to take a straight edge and we're going to lay it on the 2 upper dots, or in this case the dots on the outer edge of the pattern. And we're going to lay the ruler so it's 1.5 inches past this top dot. So go ahead and lay it on there, Beck. She has the 1.5 inch mark right on this top dot. She has the ruler on this top dot over here, and she's going to create the mystery dot right at the end of the ruler, which is exactly 1.5 inches aft of the top dot on the side curtain. And she's connected the mystery dot to that top dot on the side curtain and connected that top dot to this top dot. Now they're going to connect this top dot to the top dot down here on the windshield. Now we have the mystery dot up here, and we're going to connect it to the dot on the bottom of the curtain so that we have a straight line to connect the side curtain to the aft curtain. Just as a point of reference of why this whole dot system works. You'll notice that we have a snap here, we have a snap here, and we have a dot here. Now, if we had have forgotten this dot on the aft curtain from the boat, because we have these 2 snaps, which are the same 2 snaps that are on the side curtain, we would have been able to take the side curtain pattern, lay it on top of the aft curtain, match up the pairs of snaps, and recreate this dot from the dot that's on the side curtain. This is why if you take the system and stay with it, it works all the way through so that you can solve problems as you go. This is the side curtain. We've created a mystery dot. It's ready to cut out. This is all finished cuts. We're cutting on the line because it's not going to be sewed to something else. Okay, this completes cutting out the side curtain pattern. Now we're going to bring the drop curtain pattern up and start working that and show you where the mystery dot appears on the drop curtain. Okay, just to get everybody reoriented here as to where we are at in life. This is the main frame. We marked on it. We have a note up here to take it 1 inch short. Why? Because there's a flap up there with a zipper on it. Here's the same 2 dots on the main frame that were on the side curtain pattern that were on the top pattern. So here's how we establish where the mystery dot is on the drop curtain. We take the side curtain pattern, and this is the pout side, and this is the pout side curtain. How do I know that? Because I can read those words, believe it or not. Now also, somewhere down here, we have a pair of dots that are on the frame, and we have a dot that is on the boat. we have the same pair of dots on the side curtain and the same dot on the side curtain from the boat. So what we're going to do is lay this up here until the two dots on the frame match and the two dots down here on the boat match. And you'll see that they match right on the money. And anytime you can pull this many patterns and have all these dots pile up like a puzzle, then you've done a good job of patterning. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to establish the mystery dot on the aft curtain. And why do we have to do that? Because we extended the side curtain by 1.5 inches. Necessarily, we have to take 1.5 inches off of the drop curtain in order to have the two curtains intersect underneath the flap at the back corner of the top. So she's going to put a mystery dot right here at the corner of the side curtain. The same thing will be done on the other side. Now what we'll do, just for purposes of education, we'll leave it on, but we are going to connect the mystery dot to the lower dot on the aft curtain or the drop curtain as it applies. So let's connect those two dots. Leave the dots intact. I think about 5 minutes ago I said to you that sometimes we make a mistake when we're out patterning, but here's where you can solve that mistake, because you'll notice that we have a pair of dots piled up here. We have the dot down here, and the thing that would allow us to achieve this dot on the bottom of the drop curtain would be the fact that this same snap piles up so that we can find this same dot on the bottom of the curtain. It's just a little thing that happens, but when you're out there in the real world, things go wrong, so you got to fix it. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do now is come over on the starboard side and put the side curtain pattern up there. And again, we're going to pile up the pair of dots, pile up the dot on the bottom. We have the south side curtain here. We have the snaps piled up. We have the dot created down here. So she's going to create the mystery dot up here on the drop curtain by using the side curtain corner to find it. Now we can remove this curtain and we can connect the mystery dot to the dot on the bottom.
Using the side ruler?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Okay, here's all the things that have happened. We have achieved finding the finished side of the drop curtain. We have a little bit more to do on the bottom. We have the mark on the top that was found by marking on the frame. It tells us to cut 1 inch short, and I also think that probably if you were to measure from this line that was drawn on the frame to the mystery dot, perpendicular to that line, you'd find that you're 1 inch away. Now if you can't cut 1 inch, then mark it. But we have to cut this 1 inch away from this line all the way around, and they will hit the mystery dots. The other thing that you have to be aware of is the fact that you marked your center mark up on the frame. Consequently, when we cut this off, we're going to lose it. So right now, before you do anything else, make sure that that mystery dot or that center line gets put down onto the pattern perpendicular to the edge that you're looking at. Now, just because we're teaching this as opposed to really, well, we are going to make it, but we're teaching it too. So what we'll do is we'll cut out the top half of this drop curtain, then we'll reverse it and turn it around and cut out the bottom half so that you can see it. You can go ahead and start there, Sal. While they're cutting, I want to make one point. Don't ever cut out a pattern until you've looked at it 3 times. And make sure that you know what it is you're cutting and not cutting away something that you need. Okay, I'm just going to reverse this drop curtain so you can see what the bottom looks like before we cut it out. Here's where it wrapped around the corner to the snap. We're going to go down to here. We have to connect this arrow to this arrow down here. She's doing the same thing on the other side. And these are all finished cuts. You notice we have the center line, which we measured across the center of the boat, or measured across the floor of the boat to get the center line on the bottom. Why? So we can connect it to the center line on the top, so that we can put a window in here and make it square with the center line so that it won't be tipped off sideways on the boat. Okay, that finishes preparing the patterns ready for cutting out the material, with the exception of one thing. And the reason that we use this complete system the way we do is this. You can lay all these patterns up and you can find out whether you've got a mistake before you cut out the material. You can also establish the zipper starts and the zipper stops. You can also establish the zipper lengths. And here's why we do it this way. We do all of our cutting before we ever sit down at the sewing machine. So we're going to set the zipper starts and stops. We're only going to do one side of the pattern for purposes of teaching this. So we're going to do the port side because it becomes repetitive and we don't need to waste you people's time. Also, you notice we have a bunch of sandbags that we use on the cutting table. It's something that we can lay down on these parts to hold them in place because they get real slippery. By the same token, when we're cutting material out, we do not draw around the pattern. We lay the pattern on the finished material and we cut around the pattern. Whether we're using a hot knife or shears, we cut around the pattern. Here's why the system works. You notice here, this is the port side curtain. Here's the main frame, here's the secondary frame. Here's a pair of dots that are piled up exactly. Right. Over here, you got 3 pairs of dots that are piled up exactly. What does that tell you? It tells you did a good job of patterning. You didn't bump the frame, you didn't cut the tape, you didn't get sloppy. Down here, you got a pair of dots that are piled up. This is up on the windshield side. Why do we know it's all right? Because the side curtain pattern is one solid entity. The top is 2 separate entities. There's no way we could achieve all this without the side curtain pattern. But the side curtain pattern is not going to go anywhere. So here's the rules as far as putting zippers in and establishing zipper lengths and starts and stops on the pattern. We use the lower dot on the top pattern. We always start our zippers at the aft end, finish at the front. Why? So that the customer can unzip the curtain, stick his head out, see what he's going to hit when he's coming in at night. And they love you for it. Plus, it's easier for the customer. And the reason we were put on this earth is to make that customer have fun with no effort. So that's why we're good canvas people. So what we do here, and there's 2 more new things in your vocabulary starting again now, okay? You got ZT for zipper start and ZP for zipper stop. Why do we use those initials? Because the second word starts with S on both of them, so we can't use it. So ZT stands for zipper start. ZP stands for zipper stop. So up here, to make the start of the zipper, and to make it very exact, we're going to measure from the lower dot forward 4 inches and draw a line across both pieces at the same time and put ZT for zipper start. Then we're going to come down here from the lower dot and come back 4 inches and draw a line across both patterns at the same time and write ZP for zipper stop. Now, why am I such a nut about those lines being drawn across that junction at the same time? For this reason, any of you that have been in the canvas business over about 3 months know that if you put a zipper on a curtain and on a top and it's off 1 tooth, you've got a wrinkle in that curtain that just won't quit. So now you got to take it all the way back to the shop to fix it. We don't have to do that because we know exactly where it's going to start. We know exactly where it's going to stop. So we've established the zipper start, the zipper stop. We don't even need this anymore. But to get a length of that zipper, we can't measure the top because the top is not sewed together yet. But the side curtain is one separate entity. So we're going to measure from the start around the corner, and even with a metal ruler you can do this because it'll bend right at this junction. So what we do is log the length of the zipper in on the side curtain, 41 3/4 inch YKK. We just say YKK because that's the kind of zippers that we use, which are the only zippers on the market that will hold up to the saltwater environment that we're in. Now, here's where we might make a change. And why would we do it? Because zippers are purchased in even 1/2 foot and 1 foot increments. You can buy zippers from 18 inches all the way through 120 inches, okay? Now, we don't stock all the sizes, but well, here are the sizes for your information that we do stock. And we stock fairly heavy. We stock 36, 42, 48, 54, and 60, and 72-inch zippers. Why? Because that's the most popular sizes for all of the enclosures and all of the curtains that we use. Now, if you remember, I said 42-inch zippers. And we do have a way of cutting our zippers down to make them the exact length or number of teeth that we need. But rather than spend the effort to cut a 42-inch zipper down to 41 3/4, I would still not change the start. I would change the stop. And I would move the stop down 1/4 inch on both pieces. And log in here that we're going to use a 42-inch zipper. Now we've saved ourselves a bunch of labor. We've established the length of the zipper. And the reason that we do all this, okay, is that most people get into trouble putting zippers on because they don't know how to handle them. And even after they learn how to handle them, they still get in a little bit of trouble. So what we do is by establishing our zipper start and our zipper stop on both pieces, then there is no allowances made. You will get it from point A to point B. And we have allowances for every zipper, the way it's put on, the allowances that are made. So that if it has to be stretched a little bit in this outside curve, then we'll do it. If we got to shrink it a little bit on an inside curve, we do it. But it will get from start to finish. If you do that, you'll never get wrinkles that run crossways in your side curtains. Okay, now we can bring up our drop curtain and we can establish 2 more zipper lengths. We need to keep the side curtain pattern to do that. And we're not going to do both sides of the curtain because it just takes a lot of time. If we do one side, you'll know how we do the other side. We're going to work on the port side of the curtain. Here is the drop curtain, pout, drop curtain, right? Pout, side curtain. We're going to lay the 2 mystery dots together right up here, and believe it or not, they did come together. And we're going to lay the 2 dots down there. Now, one of the other rules that we go by, this is the junction between the side curtain and the aft curtain back under the 2-inch flap. We don't want water coming in again, okay? So the way we solve that problem is all of our vertical zippers that attach a curtain to a curtain to a curtain to a curtain forever will start 1 inch from the top and finish 2 inches from the bottom. Why? So that the slider handle doesn't get involved with the combing and hold it open. But automatically, every one of these zippers will start 1 inch from the top. So, Sally, do you want to put the zipper start up here? Becky's going to put the zipper stop down there. And again, why do our curtains fit? Because the zipper, or the starts and the stops, are drawn across the junction at the same time, so they're identical. They can't be off. Now, somebody's going to measure one of these from the start to the stop and log it in. Okay, here's another case. We have a 41-inch zippers called for, right? Now here's where we might bend the rules a little bit. Back to the same old rules of half foot and 1 foot increments. We might move this stop down a 1/2 inch. Because what harm is there? It's quicker to move that than it is to cut the zipper off 1/2 inch, right? And even if it did get the handle involved with the combing on the boat, the customer could leave it unzipped a little bit and it still would seal up. So I would automatically move that down a 1/2 inch, change this to 42, and we've saved ourselves some more time. Now we've established the vertical zipper that attaches the side curtain to the drop curtain. The next zipper that we have to establish on the port side of the boat is the zipper that attaches the drop curtain to the top. We can move this out of the way and so that everybody can see what's going to happen. And we have some rules again here. The zippers for your drop curtain or your aft curtain will always start 1/2 inch from the center and finish at the mystery dot. Why do we start them a 1/2 inch from center on each side? So that you can get the 2 zippers started. Why do we start at the center and finish at the edge? So that the customer can unzip the vertical zipper, unzip this zipper to get in and out of the boat. Right? Right. Now we got a perfect edge here that's one separate entity. We measure from the start to the stop at the mystery dot and log it on there as to what it is. So this is calling for a 24 3/8 inch zipper. Now we have an option here. We could either move the stop back 3/8 of an inch or we could cut up a 30-inch zipper, right? So again, to save myself labor, 3/8 of an inch probably will never hurt anybody. So I'd move the stop back 3/8 of an inch and change this to 24, and that's what we would put on there. That accounts for all of the zippers on this job with the exception of one thing, and we're going to put continuous zipper down through the center to get in and out of the boat. We talked about that on the boat, right? Remember? So what we do is come up here, connect the 2 center lines, and again, these particular ones, because the customer does not have to take them apart, we'll use continuous zipper as opposed to a separating type zipper. So we'll start the zipper at 1 inch down from the top by cutting some teeth out so we don't have to sew over them, and we'll finish at the bottom. So you put a start 1 inch down from the top, and you measure it, Sally, and log it in. All right, now wait just a minute, okay? Because when you look at the ruler, 72 inches, right? That's easier to cut than 73, isn't it? So let's just use a 72-inch continuous YKK, and we write CONT YKK. Now, this is how we go all the way around a convertible top, side curtain, and aft curtain, and establish all the zippers. We have these patterns worked, ready to put on the cutting table to cut out material, cut out zippers, so that when we sit down to sew, we have every bit of the product that we need. What we've tried to do today is help you along a little more in teaching you how to design, bend, pattern, work patterns, so that you can create a good-looking product on the boat.
The Marine Canvas Training Institute offers 1-week in-residence training seminars for basic boat canvas, advanced boat canvas, and boat upholstery, weekend training conferences, and daily one-on-one consulting. You may order other tapes in the Institute's video classroom series and the Marine Canvas Optimizer, its computer estimating program, by telephone or mail. Also available from the Institute are tool holsters, the Bend Right Bender, the Bent Tent Pole Measuring Tool, Don Wedge's patented stainless steel snap dies, and other tools and equipment to help you run your business more effectively. For more information and a catalog, call, write, or fax the Marine Canvas Training Institute.